Hey guys, I'm Marcus at Shoot It Film and Photography, and in this video I'm gonna take you behind the scenes of a pretty technically advanced and product focused corporate video for a drill rig that is used in underground mines. As usual, we're gonna take a look at the gear I used, such as cameras, lenses, tripods, gimbal, drones, microphones, motion graphics, 3D, all that good stuff. And at the end, I will also share the final production, so let's take a look. I had a couple of different alternatives for cameras for this shoot. My first thought was to go with the Canon C70, but I had just bought that camera, so I was not really 100% familiar with it. I also had the alternative to use the R5 and the R6, which I had used many times before. And since I also know that these two cameras are basically identical when it comes to the footage, the codecs, the colors and so on, I felt pretty confident that this would be a good choice instead of mixing different cameras with different dynamic range, different codecs and so on. The RF glass we used was a mix between the 28-70 f2 for tripod and handheld shots, and then I also used the 1535 f2 on a gimbal with the R6. And having two similar camera bodies like this also makes it easy to switch quickly, because I had the R5 pretty rigged out with rods, cage, external battery, external recorder and so on. And if I wanted to switch to a gimbal scene, then this would take quite a lot of hassle if I only had one camera body. And when you're on set, it's always a good idea to save as much time as possible. So let's take a more detailed look at the R5 rig for the tripod shots. The total weight of this rig, including the tripod, is 10.6 kilos, which is pretty heavy, but the tripod is more than half that weight, and it feels pretty nice to have something really sturdy, I think, so that you're guaranteed to get super stable tripod shots. And the Sachtler Activate T with the Flowtech75 head is quite expensive, but again, it's a really sturdy tripod and like super high quality. So let's start from the top and work our way down. Here we have the Atomos Ninja V recorder, which I power with an NPF battery attached at the back. I also have the SSD holder on the back with a Samsung 870 EVO 500GB SSD storage. Got two of those. The Ninja V is mounted in the cold shoe of the top handle with a tiltable monitor holder from SmallRig. And the top handle itself is also from SmallRig. The cage, also from SmallRig, is specifically made for Canon R5 and R6, so I have two of those as well. And on the top of the cage I have mounted a little NATO rail adapter, because the top of this cage does not have a NATO rail, which was needed for this specific top handle. And on the left side of the cage I have mounted an HDMI mini cable clamp. I strongly recommend these because on a previous shoot I accidentally broke two HDMI cables and also the HDMI connection in the camera body, which was a €500 repair. Not good. You can also see the Peak Design quick release anchors for easy connection and release of a neck strap. And these come in handy if you want to switch from handheld to tripod and quickly get rid of the neck strap. Also on the left side I have screwed in another cold shoe from SmallRig to be able to mount a side handle, which actually is a top handle, but I use it as a side handle. And this side handle is from UU Rig. Don't even know what brand that is. I think I got it from eBay or something. And honestly, it's a bit flimsy, not super high quality. You have some play here, which is not very good. But the good thing is that it has 3 additional cold shoe mounts. So not only do I get a side handle for the handheld shots, but I also get 3 additional places to mount accessories, like the receivers for 2 lav mics, or if I want to use a shotgun mic, for example. And if we take a look at the HDMI cable between the Ninja V and the camera body, you can see that this one is pretty thin, or actually it's very thin, and I really like that. This cable is from Cine, and it can handle up to 4K 60 if needed. And I also have an adapter from full-size HDMI to HDMI mini to be able to connect it to the R5. Moving on, we have a quick release plate from SmallRig again, and the base plate, the rods, the lens support, and the battery adapter plate are also from SmallRig. And as you might suspect by now, SmallRig is my #1 choice when it comes to accessories for building your own custom camera rig. And to power the R5, I have put in a dummy battery instead of a regular battery in the camera body, which then connects to the NPF battery plate. And with this solution, you don't have to worry about switching batteries. You can shoot all day long. And a few nice other things from SmallRig that I use quite often is this multi-tool and this kit with each and every dimension of screws you will ever need when building a camera rig. Very handy tools to have in your arsenal. So that's pretty much it for the R5 rig, and the R6, like I mentioned before, was used on a Zhiyun Crane 3 Lab gimbal. This is some old footage where the R5 is mounted on the Crane 3 Lab, but those cameras are virtually identical in size and weight. And the very first scene you saw in this video, in the intro, was shot with the R6 and the RF 15-35 on the Crane 3 Lab. And let's take a look at that footage before and after, because as you can see, I used some speed ramping here and also some stabilization in post. But this is what the footage looks like straight out of camera. And I shot this in 4K 50 FPS to get some more wiggle room for speed ramps, and this was of course planned before the shoot. And then with the added stabilization, just super smooth. So let's talk about the lights. We had 2 Aperture 120D Mark II and 1 Aperture 300D Mark II. These were used as sort of the main light to light the persons in frame and also the machine. Then we also had 2 Godox SL60 lights, which we used to light the rocks behind the machine. And for these lights we also used blue gels to get that cold blue color in the background, which gives a nice color contrast to the bright yellow machine. And another very nice type of LED lights are the Nanlite tube lights. We had 4 of those, and the initial idea was that we should put these underneath and behind the machine to get sort of a cold blue underlight. But this actually did not work very well because these tube lights were simply too weak, so we scrapped that idea. What I used the tube lights for instead was kind of improvised. I thought to myself that maybe these tube lights will work pretty good for creating a rim light in a few of the talking head scenes, and also would be a very good light to use inside the cabin of the machine. And I think this turned out pretty nice, adding a bit more dramatic feel to the light and going away from that soft and pretty flat look that you get if you're only using a big softbox. And I'm really happy with the light setup in these talking head scenes. I think we managed to get a good balance between the main light, the background light, and the highlight or the rim light. And since we are still in the gear section of this video, I thought I'd show you the filters I use. This is the master location pack from Lee Filters, and here you have lots of different filters depending on what you want to achieve with your light setup. I honestly don't remember which exact filters we used for that blue background light, but it was one of these very blue cold filters in this kit. I also have some pre-cut smaller bits here, ND filters as well, and we actually used these ND filters on the working lights of the machine because we could not dim these lights and they were way too bright, so we somehow had to dim them down. So that's why we use these little small pieces of ND filters. This shoot was actually the first time for me using my phaser, which is a Beams F900 with FHF5H haze fluid, and I have absolutely no idea what that designation of fluid means. But it's what the reseller recommended. And when you use haze or phase or mist or whatever you want to call it, it gives a pretty nice effect if you have backlight in your scene, because it gives the light beams more impact and presence, sort of. So during the shoot, we added a bit of haze now and then and used a reflective screen to just spread the haze around. But this was also kind of nerve-wracking because I was not 100% certain that this smoke would not set off the fire alarm. And if you haven't been in an underground mine, I can inform you that a fire is basically the worst thing that can happen. And if the fire alarm goes off, your shoot is ruined. Period. You're gonna have to evacuate the mine and then probably have to explain to a lot of angry people why you triggered the alarm with fake smoke. But luckily that did not happen. The camera settings we used were f2.8 in all scenes and ISO 400, since that's the native ISO for the R5 and the R6. And I used a mix between manual focus and eye detection autofocus, depending on what scene we were shooting. On this occasion, I had not bought my current Mac Studio yet, so I was doing the editing on an Intel iMac from 2017. And this means that the H.265 422 footage that you get from the R5 and the R6 does not work very well, since I use Premiere Pro on an Intel iMac, and that is not a good combination. And that is the reason to why I was using the Atomos Ninja V recorder, because then I could shoot everything in ProRes 422 straight out of camera or straight out of the recorder, which is a lot easier to work with in post. And for the gimbal shots from the R6, where I had no recorder, I just converted that footage to ProRes 422 before I started post-production. And on both cameras, I had set them to record in C-Log, not C-Log 3, and that's just personal preference, because I think C-Log just looks better and is easy to work with to get the result that I want than C-Log 3. And in log mode, you get 10-bit color from both the R5 and the R6, which makes a huge difference from 8-bit color. The audio from the talking head scenes were recorded with the Sennheiser EWG4 lav mics, and the receivers were connected to a Zoom Handy H6 recorder. So when we started shooting, I had my colleague starting the audio recording with the Zoom Handy at the same time. So then in post-production, I could just sync the audio from the lav mics with the audio recorded by the camera and then just switch the audio tracks. For sound effects and music, I use Artlist or Envato Elements. On one of those sites, I usually find what I need for most of my projects. Not really much more to say about the audio. The important thing there is to make sure that the recording levels are not set too high so that you get these peaks. And what I like about the Zoom Handy is that you have physical knobs to adjust the mic input separately, each mic input separately. You have 4 inputs. To me, that's just a lot easier than going into menus and pushing buttons up and down and right and left to do all your adjustments. We also had some drone shots in this video, and for that I used the DJI Mavic 3 Cine, which records in ProRes 422 HQ on a 1TB internal SSD. And getting that kind of quality from a drone of this size is what sold it for me. Quite expensive, of course, if you compare it to the DJI mini drones, for example. but the quality of the footage is worth the extra money if you're doing this professionally. It's so nice to work with that material in post. Flying a drone in an underground mine can be pretty challenging, but a positive thing is that there is absolutely zero wind, so the drone is very steady in the air, which of course then makes it easier to control. But one thing that I wasn't really prepared for was that in this environment there is water dropping here and there from the ceiling, or whatever you call it. And those water drops hit the propellers sometimes. And when this happened, the drone sort of wobbled a little bit, but luckily we had no crashes. What you're seeing here is a scene that I used for the ending of this video, with the two talents walking out of frame, and I knew that later on we were gonna shoot the talking head scene that I would cut from. So I wanted to time the position of the drone as they started walking, and we did this maybe 5 times or something to get the timing right. And I shot all the drone scenes in 4K 50 FPS so that I could slow them down to 50% speed in post to get some really slow and smooth movements. And the stabilization on the DJI Mavic 3 Cine is quite good, I must say, as with any DJI drone. So the footage is already very smooth and like straight out of camera, but if you also want to add warp stabilizer, you get even smoother movements if you want to, and I actually did that on some of the clips. To explain a few different features on this machine, we used 3D animations as a complement, because some of the things are simply impossible to film. We wanted to show what is going on inside the rock when the machine is drilling and how these features on the machine actually work. So for this we teamed up with an external 3D animator. Shout out to Yegor and his team for excellent work. And in this process I became sort of the project leader that organized everything with the technical knowledge from the product managers and then communicated with the 3D animators. And these extremely technical features of such an advanced machine are not super easy to show in the correct way. So there were lots of discussions back and forth in this process regarding exactly how we should demonstrate and show these different features, like really going into details. But in the end it turned out great, and I think that in a case like this 3D animations really add something. They are not just there for the sake of it, just because it's cool to use 3D for no reason. And I don't do 3D myself whatsoever, so I cannot really answer for what software and techniques and things that were used in this process. I know that they talked about Unreal Engine 5, which I have heard of course, but I have no idea what that means in practice, sort of. I'm just very happy with the result. To even further improve on the explanation of these technical features, we added a voiceover as well. And luckily I have a colleague who is originally from the US, but now she lives and works in Sweden. So what I did was that I rigged the mic you see here, the Neumann TLM 103, on a tripod together with a portable recording booth and a pop filter. Then I connected the mic to the Zoom Handy H6 with an XLR cable, and then we just sat down in a quiet conference room and recorded the voiceover script. So while Claire was reading, I was listening in my headphones, and then we did a few different takes until we got it right. And another thing to consider is that the closer you can get to the mic, the better quality you will get, because then you can sort of turn down the recording levels, set the recording levels low, and thereby minimize ambient noise so that you get a very clean recording. Let's listen to an example of a recording straight out of the Zoom Handy. No editing done whatsoever.
It is very important to understand the value of having the full bit face rest on the surface of the rock before starting rotation. Full face contact when collaring is a must for perfect results and increased hole quality. This punch mark function ensures bit face contact and improves coloring.
And here is also an example of a recording where I have done a few small adjustments in Adobe Audition.
It is very important to understand the value of having the full bit face rest on the surface of the rock before starting rotation. Full face contact when coloring is a must for perfect results and increased hole quality. This punch mark function ensures bit face contact and improves coloring.
So here we see the timeline in Premiere. This became almost 6 minutes long. So lots of different layers and stuff here. All my files in folders. I tried to be quite organized, just to put all the different file types and adjustment layers and sequences and footage from different cameras in different folders. And I try to name also the layers here, the video layers and the audio layers, so that it makes sense. So we have A-roll, B-roll, motion graphics, subtitles, and so on. So I thought I would just scrub through the timeline here and go in deep on some of the parts. So this motion graphics that you see is custom made for Epiroc's company profile. The motion graphic template is made specifically for them. So I just put in the template and then I change a few different parameters to adjust it to this specific video. And we also have this connectivity pattern, this hexagon pattern that they use for technology and zero emission and automation and stuff like that, high-tech stuff. You can also see the subtitle here, same thing there. That's a custom-made template, and also this name sign, same thing there, custom-made template. I just change the text to whatever I want, and then it's updated in real time. So all the animations and the colors and all that stuff is pre-selected. So those templates are really easy to use. And if we look at the grading, or the color correction here, you can see 3 different instances of Lumetri color. We have the base adjustments right here, and then I wanted to add an adjustment for his jacket and the background. So I did that separately with the help of masks to just affect the parts of the frame that I wanted to affect. And this works when you have the camera on a tripod, like a static talking head scene, sort of. And here we have a drone scene, and this is from the Mavic 3 Cine. You can see before after here, the really flat log profile that you get from this camera. And like I said before, the footage from this little drone is so amazing to work with in post, because you get this ProRes 422 HQ footage straight out of camera. And you have a lot of wiggle room to work on the colors and the contrast and do whatever you want, basically. And maybe I went a bit too far with the contrast and stuff there, but that's how I liked it. Same thing here with the right third motion graphics here. That's also a template, so I can change a lot of parameters here to whatever I want. And here we have a pretty nice little pan of the machine. This is shot with the R5 and the Ninja recorder. And as you can see, we have a lot of wiggle room for doing color grading here as well, when we compare the footage straight out of the recorder and then doing some adjustments in Lumetri color. And this cut right here, I'm pretty proud of this cut actually, because we planned this ahead. So you can see that on this first scene, he starts to rotate his body and his head, and then I cut to the next scene where we continue this motion, but the camera angle is completely different. So this was planned, and I had an idea. how I wanted to do this, and it worked out quite well. Moving on, let's see what we have here. Yeah, this is the first 3D animation out of 5, I think, we used in this video. Not really much to say here. I added these yellow bars to illustrate what actually happens when this feature of the machine kicks in, sort of, when we see what happens inside the rock. Another 3D animation here. I have done like no adjustments to these animations. I got them delivered as ProRes files, so I just put them in my timeline, and yeah, really simple. I also used some motion tracking here. You can see this little motion graphics where we point out the power bit X, as it is called, the drill bit. And I actually did this in After Effects. So I exported this specific little part of the scene, and then I did the motion tracking in After Effects, and then I just put it in the timeline in Premiere afterwards. Because you have, I think the motion tracking works better in After Effects, so I did a little mix here. Another 3D animation to the right, and when we shot this scene, we placed Olav to the right in frame, so that we had room for the 3D animation. Autosave. And same thing here with Mikael. Did some motion tracking in After Effects, and then just put that scene on a new layer. But if we look at the grading or the color correction of this clip, looks like this before, and there you have after. And I also added an adjustment layer to light up his face. So this is the mask of that layer, and I did some manual tracking for this adjustment layer. I thought it looked better with a little more light in the face there. And another 3D animation mixed with some footage, and also the voiceover, which I explained earlier. Another feature of the machine that we try to explain with the help of a voiceover and 3D animation and graphics. So here we have the ending scene where they conclude everything they talked about, and then the drone scene to end everything. And also the outro, same thing here, templates that are part of the company motion graphic profile, sort of. So just put them in there. If you have watched the video this far, thank you so much, and please consider liking and subscribing. Click those buttons for more content like this. And with that, I will leave you with the final version of this production. I hope you like it. See you in the next video. Take care. Bye.
Hello, my name is Michael Larslin. In this video we talk about the new Simba E70. It's the latest production drill rig with excellent visibility and several advanced automation features.
The Simba E70 delivers on effectiveness, utilization and quality, the three most driving factors improving our customers' productivity. My name is Olav Kvist. Please join us for a closer look. Effectiveness measures if the machine is drilling when it is turned on and active. We measure this from our connected fleet, comparing peers in the industry and benchmarking really what good looks like. An average Simba will drill 45 meters per hour of drilling, so even half an hour improvement will make a big difference. So, Mikael, What are the new features that will help us improve effectiveness?
The new carousel on the Simba E70 has a more robust rod handler, new worm gear, improved gripper arms, and new cylinders in the drill steel support. These will increase the lifespan of the carousel, at the same time lowering the part cost. This means in the long run, less breakdowns and higher effectiveness. The new software functionality, feed speed control impact, adapt impact pressure according to penetration rate. This will of course increase effectiveness.
Utilization measures when the machine is active and ready to go to work. We measure utilization as the time when an active component such as the hydraulic motor and the power pack supplies power so we can run a compressor or even the rock drill. When we take utilization time over 24 hours in a day, we create a percentage that will then allow us to baseline and compare to other peers in the industry. This is how we can assess what good looks like.
The ABC Total option allows for drilling during shift changes, breaks, and other downtime. It will greatly increase drill meters and productivity when used correctly. The new dual control room functionality means increased utilization, since the machine can be controlled from 2 different locations. This saves transportation time to and from the rig, time that can be used for drilling instead, which significantly increases utilization. The Simba E70 features Epiroc's RCS5-based carrier control system. This is an enabler for future automation and zero-emission battery electric driveline.
Our third key benefit is the ability to improve on the drilled hole quality. As we know, there are 3 sources of errors when you're drilling. The first part being the collaring point. Do you actually collar on the correct position? The second, and by far most important, is the angle of your drill string when you approach with the drill unit. Do we actually collar with the correct angle, because that will affect big time as we go. The third, harder to measure, is the in-hole deviation that occurs as we go deeper, adding rods into the string. But the easiest way to improve on your hole quality is to start reporting, engaging your operators in the feedback loop so that you can start talking about how to improve and how to deliver the correct quality. Because, as they say, what you measure is what you get.
Let's take a closer look at how we improve hole quality.
Punch marks are standard on all RCS5 Simba rigs and add value by improving the quality, as they reduce the hole deviation when collaring if set up correctly. It is very important to understand the value of having the full bit face rest on the surface of the rock before starting rotation. Full face contact when collaring is a must for perfect results and increased hole quality. This punch mark function ensures bit face contact and improves collaring. Void detection is an option that increases hole quality by adjusting pressure and speed while entering a void. This secures new smooth collaring in the void end. This increases the overall hole quality. Void detection together with punch mark functionality and FSCI make the Simba E70 an outstanding performer in underground production drilling.
All the features and options we have shown in this Simba E70 video connects closely to our Sixth Sense portfolio and the process of stope optimization.
So Olav, how do we make a good summary of this new Simba E70?
Well, it is the obvious next step in production drilling.